The small scout ship shuddered violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Inside, Kira Naveen gripped the control panel, her blue-green fingers working frantically across the flashing displays. Warning lights bathed her iridescent skin in a red glow as the ship's systems continued to fail one by one. "No, no, no," Kira muttered, as the engine's power dropped to dangerous levels. She was a skilled engineer, but there was little she could do with systems this damaged. What had started as a routine scouting mission was quickly becoming a fight for survival. The Zixaran Confederation had strict rules about Earth. Observe from a distance, collect data, but never make contact. Humans were considered too primitive, too unpredictable for official first contact, and now she was about to crash land right in their backyard. Kira's violet eyes scanned the terrain below. She needed somewhere remote, away from human settlements. The navigation system showed a heavily forested area with scattered homes and buildings. It would have to do. With her communications array damaged and no way to call for help, she had no choice. The ship screamed through the night sky, leaving a brief trail of light that might be mistaken for a meteor by any humans who happened to be watching. Kira engaged the remaining thrusters, trying to slow her descent. Trees snapped beneath the ship as it plowed through the forest, before finally grinding to a halt in a small clearing. The sudden silence was broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the ping of warning signals. Kira took a deep breath and ran a quick diagnostic. The results made her heart sink. Life support, critical. Engine core, offline. Navigation, offline. Communication, offline. The computer's voice was calm, unlike Kira's racing thoughts. She touched the small implant at the base of her neck, the device that regulated her body's adaptation to Earth's atmosphere and gravity. It gave a weak pulse, but the diagnostic showed it was damaged too. Without repairs, she had maybe 3 Earth days before it failed completely. Computer, analyze local area. What resources are available within walking distance? After a moment, the computer displayed a map showing a small cluster of buildings about 2 miles away. Human dwelling and workshop detected. High probability of electrical components and metallic resources. Kira sighed. She knew what she had to do, even though it went against every protocol in the book. Break into a human building, find parts, to repair her ship and her implant, and get off this planet before anyone noticed she was here. As night fell, Kira prepared herself. She activated her adaptive camouflage, watching as her blue-green skin took on a more human tone and her pointed ears rounded. The gill-like structures on her neck flattened and disappeared from view. She couldn't pass for human under close inspection, but in the dark it might be enough. She gathered her tools and emergency supply pack, then slipped out of the damaged ship. The Earth air felt strange in her lungs, richer in oxygen than she was used to, making her feel slightly lightheaded. The forest around her was alive with sounds, insects chirping, leaves rustling, small animals scurrying away from the strange visitor. The walk to the human dwelling took longer than expected. Earth's gravity was slightly stronger than her home, world's, making each step more tiring. By the time she reached the edge of a cleared area surrounding several buildings, sweat beaded on her forehead. From the cover of trees, Kira observed the property. A small house sat dark and quiet. Next to it stood a larger building with wide doors, some kind of workspace. A few vehicles were parked nearby, strange mechanical things that Zixaran intelligence reports had identified as primitive but functional. Earth transportation. Kira waited, watching for any signs of movement. When none came, she crept toward the workshop building. Its large door was locked, but a smaller side entrance yielded to her electronic lockpick after a few attempts. Inside, she found herself surrounded by tools, parts, and machinery. Despite the primitive level of technology, Kira felt a spark of hope. Many of the components looked adaptable, particularly a collection of rare earth metals and electronics on a workbench in the corner. Using the dim light of her portable scanner, Kira began examining the materials. Some could definitely work as substitutes for her damaged systems. She carefully selected pieces, testing their compatibility with her scanner. She was so focused on her work that she didn't hear the approaching footsteps until it was too late. The workshop door opened and light flooded the space. "What the hell? Who's in here?" a deep voice called out. Kira froze, clutching a handful of electronic components. Standing in the doorway was a human male, tall with broad shoulders and a confused expression on his face. He wore simple sleeping clothes and held a small light in one hand. "I asked who you are and what you're doing in my workshop," the man said, stepping closer. Kira's mind raced. Her translation device allowed her to understand and speak the human language, but she hadn't expected to need it so soon. "I need help," she said, her voice sounding strange even to her own ears. The man, Eric Graham, though Kira didn't know his name yet, moved closer, his light now directly on her face. His expression changed from anger to confusion. "Your eyes," he said slowly. "They're purple?" Kira felt a dangerous tingle from her camouflage device. The strain of maintaining the disguise was taxing its already damaged circuits. Before she could respond, the device failed completely with a small electrical pop. Eric stumbled back as the woman before him transformed. Her skin shifted from a tan human tone to a shimmering blue-green. Her ears elongated to delicate points, and gill-like structures appeared on her neck. The strange woman, clearly not a woman at all, looked just as shocked as he was. "Please," Kira said, holding up her hands to show she meant no harm. "I don't want trouble. My ship crashed. I need parts to repair it." Eric's mouth opened and closed several times, no words coming out. His light trembled slightly in his hand. "Ship?" he finally managed. "As in, spaceship?" Kira nodded slowly. "Yes, I am Kira Naveen, engineer of the Zixaran scout vessel Stellar Wind." "You're an alien," Eric said, stating the obvious in his shock. Before Kira could respond, a wave of dizziness hit her. Her implant gave a painful pulse at the base of her neck, warning of imminent failure. The room spun around her, and she reached out to steady herself against the workbench. "My life support implant. It's failing," she gasped. "Without it, Earth's atmosphere will poison me." The tools in her hands clattered to the floor as her legs gave way. The last thing Kira saw before consciousness slipped away was the human man rushing forward to catch her, his face a mixture of fear and concern. Eric Graham, a simple mechanic from rural Oregon, found himself holding an unconscious alien woman in his workshop with no idea what to do next except know that he couldn't just let her die. Eric Graham sat on a stool next to the cot where the alien woman lay unconscious. He had dragged the cot from the back of his workshop after she collapsed. For the past hour, he had been staring at her, trying to make sense of what was happening. Her skin was a beautiful blue-green color that seemed to shimmer slightly in the workshop lights. The gill-like structures on her neck moved gently as she breathed. Her pointed ears reminded Eric of characters from fantasy movies, but there was nothing make-believe about the strange woman in his workshop. "This is crazy," Eric whispered to himself. Completely crazy. He had considered calling someone, the police, the hospital, maybe even the government, but something stopped him. The fear in her eyes before she collapsed had seemed so real, so human. Instead of making any calls, Eric had spent the time examining the tools she had brought with her. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, sleek, clearly advanced and humming with an energy he didn't understand. As a mechanic who had once worked in aerospace engineering, his curiosity was stronger than his fear. A small groan from the cot pulled Eric from his thoughts. The alien woman was waking up. Her violet eyes flickered open, looking confused before focusing on Eric. She tried to sit up quickly but fell back with a wince of pain. "Easy," Eric said, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "You passed. Out. I put you on this cot." The woman touched the back of her neck, feeling for something. Panic flashed across her face. "My implant," she said, her voice musical but strained. "It's failing. I don't have much time." "What kind of implant?" Eric asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the strangeness of talking to an actual alien. "Life support. It helps my body adapt to Earth's atmosphere and gravity." She looked at him with desperate eyes. "Without it working properly, I'll get sicker until—" She didn't finish, but Eric understood. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to think clearly. "My name is Eric Graham," he said finally. "And you said you're—" "Kira Naveen, engineering specialist on the Zixaran scout vessel Stellar Wind." She looked around the workshop. I'm sorry for breaking in, I had no choice. Eric nodded slowly. You said your ship crashed? Yes. Engine failure. I managed to land in the forest about 2 miles from here, Kira explained. My ship is damaged beyond flight capability, and my personal implant was damaged during the crash. And you came here looking for parts, Eric said, glancing at the components she had been gathering when he found her. Kira nodded. I need to repair both my implant and my ship's communication system to call for rescue. She hesitated, then added, My people have a policy of non-interference with Earth. Humans are considered not ready for official contact. And yet here, you are, Eric said with a slight smile. Here I am, Kira agreed, breaking every rule in our contact protocols. Eric stood up and paced around the workshop. His mind was racing with questions, fears, and a strange excitement he hadn't felt in years. Since Lisa died 3 years ago, he had retreated from his promising career in aerospace engineering to this quiet life as a rural mechanic. Now the universe had literally crashed into his backyard. How long do you have? He asked, turning back to Kira. With the implant in its current state, maybe 2 Earth days before I become too sick to function, she said grimly. Eric took a deep breath. Then we better get to work. Kira looked surprised. You'll help me? I'm not going to let you die in my workshop if I can help it, Eric said. Besides, I used to work in aerospace engineering. I've always wanted to see alien technology up close. For the first time, Kira smiled. It transformed her face, making her seem less alien and more like a person in need. Thank you, she said simply. The next morning, they began work in earnest. Kira showed Eric her implant, a small device at the base of her skull that connected to her nervous system. Using her tools and Eric's equipment, they created a makeshift diagnostic system. The power cell is degrading, Kira explained, pointing to a readout on her scanner. And this connection here is damaged. Eric examined the diagrams carefully. I think I can fabricate something similar using materials from my old electronics projects. The power cell might be trickier. They worked side by side, Kira explaining Zixaran technology while Eric offered Earth alternatives. Despite the language and cultural barriers, they found common ground in engineering principles. Laws of physics, it seemed, were universal. As they worked, Eric learned more about Kira and her people. The Zixarans were a spacefaring civilization specializing in bioengineering and cybernetics. Kira was unusual among her kind for preferring mechanical engineering over the biological sciences that most Zixaran females pursued. It made me something of an outcast, she admitted as she helped Eric modify a small power cell. Which is partly why I volunteered for this scouting mission. I wanted to prove myself. I get that, Eric said. After my wife died, everyone expected me to continue my career. Instead, I came out here to start over. My old colleagues think I'm wasting my talent. Kira looked up from her work. You lost your mate? Wife? Lisa. Cancer. A disease. 3 years ago, Eric said, the familiar pain evident in his voice. Kira nodded, understanding loss despite their different worlds. I'm sorry. Their work was interrupted by the sound of a vehicle coming up the driveway. Eric peered out the window and cursed under his breath. It's Olivia, the local sheriff, he said, urgently. She stops by sometimes to check on me. You need to hide. Kira gathered her tools quickly and moved to the back of the workshop where Eric pointed to a storage room. Just as the door closed behind her, there was a knock on the workshop door. Eric opened it to find Sheriff Olivia Mason standing there, her friendly smile not quite hiding her curiosity. Morning, Eric. Saw your lights on all night. Everything okay? She asked, trying to peer past him into the workshop. Just working on a new project, Eric said, attempting to sound casual. Got carried away and lost track of time. Olivia nodded, though she didn't seem entirely convinced. Some folks reported strange lights in the sky last night. Thought it might have been a meteor, but no one's found any impact site. Eric's heart raced, but he kept his expression neutral. Didn't see anything myself. Was inside working. Well, If you notice anything unusual, let me know, Olivia said. After a moment of awkward silence, she added, It's good to see you working on something that excites you again. Been a while. After she left, Eric let out a long breath and opened the storage room door. Kira emerged looking pale. That was close, she said. Too close, Eric agreed. We need to be more careful, and we need to work faster. By evening, they had made progress. Using a combination of Zixaran technology and Earth components, they created a temporary fix for Kira's implant. When they activated it, the color immediately returned to Kira's face and she took a deep breath of relief. It's working, she said with a smile. Not a permanent solution, but it will give us more time to work on the ship repairs. Eric smiled back, surprised at how much her improvement lifted his spirits. In just one day, this alien visitor had awakened something in him he thought had died with Lisa, a sense of purpose, of being needed. Tomorrow we'll start on your communication system, he promised, one step at a time. As night fell, Eric made a simple meal that Kira could safely eat. They sat together in the workshop, an unlikely pair brought together by chance and necessity, but already forming the beginnings of something that felt remarkably like friendship. The next few days established a rhythm for Eric and Kira. During daylight hours, Eric would go about his normal business, taking on small repair jobs from locals to avoid suspicion. At night, they would work together on gathering components for Kira's ship repairs. Tonight, they were making a careful trip to a local electronics store that had closed hours ago. The parking lot was empty as Eric's truck pulled up behind the building. Remember, we're only taking what we absolutely need, Eric said as he cut the engine. And I'm leaving money to cover it. Kira nodded, adjusting her camouflage device. With Eric's help, they had improved its function, allowing her to maintain a human appearance for longer periods. Her skin now looked tan instead of blue-green. Her pointed ears were rounded, and her gill structures were hidden. Only her unusual violet eyes remained, which Eric had suggested they could explain away as colored contact lenses if anyone asked. I still don't understand why you insist on paying for items we're taking without permission, Kira said as they approached the back door. Because I'm not a thief, Eric replied, working on the lock. We may be breaking in, but at least the owner won't lose money. Using Kira's electronic tools and Eric's knowledge of the building's layout, they entered quietly. Eric led the way to the storage room where the more specialized components were kept. The capacitors should be here, he whispered, shining a small light on the shelves. And those rare earth magnets you needed? They worked quickly, gathering the items on their list. Kira was fascinated by how primitive yet functional earth technology was. In some ways, its simplicity made it easier to adapt to her needs than more advanced components would have been. Eric, she whispered. Look at this. She held up a small solar power bank. With some modifications, this could help power the communication array. Eric nodded, adding it to their collection. He left a stack of cash in the office, far more than the items were worth, before they slipped back out into the night. On the drive home, Kira stared out the window at the stars, feeling a strange mix of homesickness and contentment. What's your world like? Eric asked, noticing her gaze. Kira smiled slightly. Zixar is beautiful. 3 moons, rings like your Saturn but more colorful. Our cities are built to blend with nature, tall structures that follow the natural curves of the land. The sky is more purple than blue. She paused. But there are strict rules about everything. Your life is mostly planned out from birth based on your genetic profile. That's why being a mechanical engineer made you different? Eric asked. Kira nodded. My genetic profile showed strong aptitude for biological sciences. Going against that was frowned upon. She turned to him. What about you? Why did you leave your career after your wife died? Eric was quiet for a moment. Lisa was sick for a long time. I spent every free minute researching her condition, thinking my engineering mind could somehow find a solution that doctors couldn't. When she died anyway, he gripped the steering wheel tighter. I couldn't stand being around all that technology that had failed to save her. I needed something simpler, more practical, fixing things that can actually be fixed. Back at the workshop, they unloaded their new supplies. Over the past week, they had created a makeshift clean room in the back where they could work on the more sensitive components of Kira's technology. As they worked, Kira told Eric about the dozen other civilizations her people had encountered in their space exploration. Eric shared stories of Earth's cultures and history, carefully explaining concepts Kira found strange, like nations fighting each other on the same planet, or the wide variety of religious beliefs. "I brought something for you," Eric said suddenly, reaching into a bag. He pulled out a container of strawberries. "I thought you might like to try these." Kira had been cautious about Earth food, but her implant now included a function to warn her of anything potentially toxic to her system. She took a small red fruit and bit into it carefully. Her eyes widened in surprise. "This is amazing," she said, quickly taking another bite. "We have nothing like this at home." Eric laughed at her enthusiasm. "I was hoping you'd like them. There's a whole world of Earth food you might enjoy." As the night went on, Eric connected his old music player to the workshop speakers. Kira listened intently as he played different styles of music, from classical to rock to jazz. "Music is similar across many cultures," Kira explained, moving slightly to the rhythm. "But yours has so much variety." Without thinking, Eric held out his hand. "This is what we call dancing," he said as a slow song began to play. Kira hesitated, then took his hand. Eric showed her how to follow his steps, moving together around the open space of the workshop. It felt strange at first. Kira was lighter than a human woman, her movements more fluid. But soon they found a comfortable rhythm. "Your people don't dance?" Eric asked. "Not like this," Kira replied. "We have ceremonial movements, but they're more formal." "Not so." She searched for the word. "Personal." They were close now, Kira's hand in Eric's, his other hand at her waist. The music seemed to fade into the background as they looked at each other. For a moment, the differences between them, human and alien, seemed to disappear. A loud beeping from Kira's scanner broke the moment. They stepped apart quickly as Kira checked the device. "It's my ship," she said, her voice suddenly tense. "The emergency beacon has activated." "Is that bad?" Eric asked, noticing her worried expression. "Very bad," Kira replied. "If the signal reaches any Zixaran vessels in this sector, they'll come looking for me." She looked up at Eric, fear in her violet eyes. "My people would consider this unauthorized contact. They have methods to remove memories of contact with advanced species." Eric understood what she wasn't saying directly. "They would make me forget you." Kira nodded. "We need to disable that beacon immediately, and we need to finish the repairs to my communication system so I can send a coded message to abort any rescue attempt." They gathered their tools quickly, preparing for a nighttime trip to Kira's crashed ship. As they worked, Eric found himself looking at Kira more often than necessary, watching her skilled hands manipulate the tools, seeing the determination in her face. He realized with a sudden clarity that the thought of forgetting her was unbearable. In just over a week, this visitor from another world had awakened something in him he thought was dead. Not just his passion for engineering, but his capacity for connection. As they loaded the truck with their equipment, Sheriff Olivia's patrol car drove slowly past the property. Though she didn't stop, her suspicious glance toward the workshop was clear. "We need to be careful," Eric said as the taillights disappeared down the road. "I think she's watching us." Kira nodded, her camouflage active but her worry still evident. "Then we'll need to be quick. The beacon signal grows stronger every hour." They drove toward the forest in silence, both aware that the stakes had just gotten much higher. What had started as a simple matter of repairs had become far more complicated, and not just because of the beacon or the sheriff's suspicions. Neither of them spoke about the moment they had shared while dancing. Neither admitted how much they had come to look forward to their time together. But as Eric's truck bounced down the dark country road, both were thinking the same thing. Their time together was running out, and neither was ready to say goodbye. The forest was dark and quiet as Eric's truck bumped along the narrow dirt path. They had to stop about half a mile from Kira's ship and continue on foot, carrying tools and the components they had gathered over the past week. "How much farther?" Eric asked, pushing aside a low-hanging branch. Just ahead, Kira replied. Her camouflage was deactivated now, her natural blue-green skin almost glowing in the moonlight filtering through the trees. There. They stepped into a small clearing where Kira's ship rested at an angle, partially buried in the soft earth. Even damaged, it was the most beautiful machine Eric had ever seen. Sleek, with flowing lines unlike any aircraft on Earth. Its surface had a metallic sheen that seemed to shift colors as they approached. It's amazing, Eric whispered, unable to hide his awe. It's a standard scout vessel, Kira said with a small smile, amused by his reaction. One of the smallest ships in our fleet. They entered through a hatch on the side. Inside, the ship was compact but efficiently designed. Control panels with strange symbols glowed with soft light, and warning signals flashed on several displays. The beacon control is here, Kira said, moving quickly to a panel near what Eric assumed was the pilot's seat. We need to disable it, before the signal reaches any nearby Zixaran vessels. They worked together, Kira guiding Eric through the unfamiliar technology. With their combined skills, they managed to silence the beacon within an hour. That buys us time, Kira said with relief. Now we need to install the components for the communication system. The work was delicate and precise. Eric watched in fascination as Kira integrated Earth technology with her advanced systems. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow she made it possible. Her hands moved with confident precision, making adjustments no human engineer would have thought of. You're brilliant, you know that? Eric said as she connected a modified power cell to a crystal-like component from her ship. Kira looked up, surprised. This is basic engineering for my people. Maybe, but making it work with our primitive Earth parts? That's all you. She smiled, a slight purple blush coloring her cheeks. We make a good team. As dawn approached, they finished the essential repairs. The communication system powered up successfully, allowing Kira to send a coded signal that would prevent any rescue attempts based on the earlier beacon. It worked, she said, relief evident in her voice. And the engine repairs are coming along well. Another 2 or 3 days and I should be able to take off. Eric nodded, feeling a strange heaviness in his chest at her words. That's good. They gathered their tools in silence, both aware that their time together was growing short. As they exited the ship, the rising sun painted the forest in golden light. The walk back to the truck was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the vehicle, Eric stopped suddenly. Kira, he said, his voice serious. I need to tell you something. She turned to face him, her violet eyes questioning. I don't want you to go, he said simply. I know it's crazy. We've only known each other for days. You're from another world, but... Before he could finish, the sound of approaching vehicles made them both freeze. Headlights appeared on the forest road coming toward them. Get in, quick, Eric said, throwing their tools in the back of the truck. They jumped in just as 2 vehicles came into view, Sheriff Olivia's patrol car and a black SUV with government plates. Eric started the engine and turned around, taking a different path through the trees. How did they find us? Kira asked, activating her camouflage as they drove. I don't know, Eric replied, checking the rearview mirror nervously. But that second vehicle looked federal. This is bad. They managed to reach a main road without being followed, but when they arrived back at Eric's property, their hearts sank. Sheriff Olivia's patrol car and the black SUV were parked in the driveway. We can't go back there, Eric said, driving past without slowing down. They must have been watching the place. Where can we go? Kira asked, her camouflage flickering slightly from stress. Eric thought quickly. I have a friend, Joe, who owns a cabin about 20 miles from here. He never uses it except during hunting season, which isn't for months. The cabin was small and dusty but offered a safe place to hide. Eric found some canned food in the cupboards while Kira set up her equipment to monitor for any Zixaran signals. The communication system is picking up something, she said suddenly, her face paling. Beneath the camouflage, a Zixaran scout ship has entered Earth's solar system. Eric sat down heavily beside her. I thought you stopped the beacon. We did, but it was active long enough to alert someone. Kira manipulated the controls, bringing up more information. Her expression changed from worry to shock. It's Commander Jax Varine's ship. Who is he? Eric asked, noticing her reaction. Kira hesitated before answering. He was my betrothed, a political match arranged by our families. Your fiancé? Eric felt a strange mix of jealousy and concern. Not by choice, Kira explained quickly. It's part of why I volunteered for this mission, to delay the union. Jax is ambitious, connected to the conservative faction that opposes any contact with developing worlds like Earth. Eric tried to process this new information. So this commander is coming for you, and he's the last person who should find out. You've been in contact with a human. Exactly, Kira said. If he discovers what's happened here, he'll enforce the strictest interpretation of the non-interference protocols. For me, that would mean exile. For you, memory wiping. Eric finished. How long until he arrives? At his current speed, less than 2 Earth days. They sat in silence, the weight of their situation sinking in. Eric reached out and took Kira's hand, surprised at how natural it felt despite her alien physiology. We have 2 options, he said. Finally. Get your ship fixed and get you off Earth before he arrives, or what? Kira asked. I could go with you, Eric said, the idea forming as he spoke. Leave Earth behind. Kira stared at him in shock. You would do that? Leave your world, your life, everything you know? What life? Eric asked with a sad smile. I've been half alive since Lisa died. This past week with you, working together, learning about your world, I've felt more alive than I have in years. Before Kira could respond, Eric's phone rang. The screen showed Sheriff Olivia. With a deep breath, he answered. Hello? Eric, it's Olivia. We need to talk. Her voice was serious. I have Agent Daniels from the government with me. We know about your visitor. Eric's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? The alien. Eric. We have satellite images of the crash site, and your workshop has been giving off some very unusual energy signatures. Olivia's voice softened slightly. Look, just come in with her. We can work this out. I don't think so, Eric replied. I know what your agent would want to do with her. Eric, this is bigger than just you. This is first contact with an alien species, the whole world. She's not a science experiment, Eric interrupted. She's a person who needed help, and I helped her. After hanging up, Eric looked at Kira. They know. We need to get back to your ship now. It's our only chance. Kira nodded, her eyes filled with determination and something else, something that looked remarkably like the love Eric was feeling. Together, she said softly. As they gathered their things to make a run for the ship, Eric realized that in trying to help an alien find spare parts, he had found something far more valuable. A second chance at life and love, even if it meant leaving Earth behind. Dawn broke as Eric and Kira reached the clearing where her ship rested. They had driven as close as possible before continuing on foot, racing against time with their remaining components. To their horror, they spotted government vehicles parked at the edge of the forest. They found the ship, Eric whispered, pulling Kira behind a large tree. There's another way in, Kira said. A maintenance hatch on the underside, if we can reach it without being seen. They circled around, using the dense forest as cover. Agents in dark suits patrolled the area, but their focus was on the main entrance of the ship. Eric and Kira crawled through the underbrush until they reached the ship's belly. Kira quickly opened the hidden hatch and they slipped inside. Working in near darkness, they rushed to complete the final repairs to the engine. Almost there, Kira whispered, connecting the last components. Once we power up, they'll know we're here. Eric nodded. How long until your commander arrives? Hours, at most. Kira's hands moved swiftly across the controls. Eric, are you sure about this? Coming with me means leaving everything behind. Eric took her hands in his. I've never been more sure of anything. The ship hummed to life around them, lights flickering on as systems reactivated. Outside, they heard shouts of alarm. This is Agent Daniels. We know you're in there. Come out now. Kira slid into the pilot's seat, Eric beside her, The control panel responded to her touch, the ship trembling as it prepared to lift off. Warning, the ship's computer announced. Zig-Sarin vessel approaching. Through the view screen, they saw a bright light in the sky growing larger. Commander, Jax's ship entering Earth's atmosphere. It's now or never, Eric said. Kira engaged the engines. The scout vessel shuddered, then broke free from the Earth. The government agents scattered as the ship rose above the trees. As they accelerated upward, the communication system chimed. Commander Jax's stern face appeared on the screen. Engineer Naveen, he said coldly. You will dock with my vessel immediately. Kira straightened her shoulders. Commander, I have important information about Earth. This human has aided me and wishes to speak to the Council. Jax's eyes narrowed at the sight of Eric. This violates every non-contact protocol. With respect, Commander, Eric said, stepping forward. Your protocols need updating. Our worlds have much to offer each other. To their surprise, Jax's expression changed. Perhaps you're right. Recent political shifts in the Confederation suggest it may be time for careful contact with Earth. He paused. Dock with my ship. We will discuss this situation. Hours later, aboard the larger Zig-Sarin vessel, Eric and Kira stood together looking through a viewport at the blue planet. Below, the negotiations had been tense but productive. Eric would be allowed to return to Earth to help prepare for future limited contact, while Kira would serve as the liaison for a new cultural exchange program. Not exactly how I planned this, Eric said, but it means we can be together. Kira smiled, her violet eyes shining. Who would have thought my search for spare parts would lead to this? A bridge between our worlds. And something even more important, Eric said, taking her hand. As they watched Earth turning slowly below them, they knew their journey was just beginning. What had started with a crashed ship and stolen components had become something neither could have imagined, a love that spanned the stars and the promise of a new future for both their peoples.